Yeah, exactly. Now I'm in the flow. Yeah. Keep it real, keep it salty. Yeah, so I'm Mike Petrosoniak. I'm the founder of Salty Hair, which is basically a hair product company. Started, it's definitely a bit of a long story. I would say the idea started in about 2010. I actually really started kind of cracking down on various recipes and that sort of thing in 2013. And then just in the past year, so about summer of 2017 was when I started really trying to figure out how to make production happen, figure out how to get the product out there, and essentially, finalize the recipe and that sort of thing. So yeah, the origin of Salty Hair, I mean, the idea started when a buddy and I were teaching sailing and windsurfing at a Club Med down in Bahamas. And we were we just were in the ocean every single day and loved the feeling of our hair when we got out of the ocean. We really did not need to use any other hairstyling product in our hair because the ocean was essentially enough. It was, it added texture, volume, hold, and it was pretty crazy to see the effect that seawater was having on our hair. And we would go weeks without shampooing our hair to try to keep that salty feeling alive. Yeah, we wanted to bottle up that salty feeling essentially. Later I moved out to Halifax, right next to the ocean. So at that time I started to decide to actually test out this product and see whether it was something that would work. And the first recipe was really just me going to the ocean, getting a bottle, scooping it up, and spraying it in my hair and seeing what that did for my hair, which at the time really was not a whole lot. So from there, that's when I started to see what needed to be done to the seawater in order to make it something that could be a hair product. And so I started boiling it down to condense it, concentrate sort of that salty feeling, and then started adding various other ingredients, aloe, flax, seaweed extract, and came up with a brewing process essentially for Salty Hair to make the product that I wanted. So yeah, it's a good question. So it took about probably over 50 prototypes to get to the recipe that we wanted. And as I said, I definitely see more variations of the recipe coming out. I don't want to just have one salt spray. I'd like to have kind of a lineup that does different things for different hair types. But to get to the first recipe, sort of the original salty, took about 50 recipes. And really each time whenever I wanted to add a new ingredient, it was basically start with 0 of that, go a little bit crazy, go to max it out completely, and then dial it back to see where, at what point, like I had the sort of the perfect amount of that ingredient. Each time, each ingredient would sort of have an effect on how the other ingredients, interacted, I guess, or had an effect on your hair. And so each time I added a new ingredient, I kind of had to check that the last one was still at the right amount as well. I started sailing when I was 8. My parents put my brothers and I in sailing camp near our cottage in Ontario, basically just as a way to keep us busy and out of trouble for the summer months. And so that was sort of my start, I guess, into the world of water sports. Loved it. Kind of every summer growing up, basically, would go to sailing club, and later got into windsurfing, and then also got into kiteboarding. And so those kind of 3 sports have really been my connection with the water, or connection with the sea. And yeah, really at this point I mostly kiteboard, and that's kind of my favorite way to get out into the ocean. And so pretty much anytime we have a windy day around Halifax, which is pretty often, I try to get out there as long as I'm not too busy. Yeah, so I did chemical engineering at Western University basically right after high school. I'm not sure exactly what I thought it was going to be, but I didn't end up in oil and gas. So I think I wanted to stick more to actually renewables side, but I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial passion or passion to create new products and do new things. And so that's later on kind of where I followed with the idea for Salty Hair. So yeah, my first degree was in chemical engineering, and I think that's helped me with the ability to kind of design products and also just be familiar with sort of the experimental process of like adding new ingredients, documenting everything along the way, and kind of finding out what works. Also have a master's degree in environmental resource and environmental management, and that's always been a big thing for me, is trying to do things as environmentally friendly as possible. The main thing behind Salty Hair is the fact that it's right from the ocean. It uses real seawater. So yeah, basically like back in 2010, when my buddy and I kind of first had the idea for this hair product, it was really to replicate the ocean's effect on hair as best as possible. I noticed that other companies had salt sprays, other hair product companies had salt sprays in their lineup, but it wasn't, they all kind of recreated the salt water essentially. So it was water and then sodium chloride and magnesium chloride rather than just straight up the actual mix from the ocean. So when I started making the product, that was one thing that I really wanted to be a part of the company, was to use the actual real ingredient. And so for the first product of Salty Hair, that's obviously the ocean. So using real seawater and boiling it down and going from there. Keeping it along the same lines, all the other ingredients that I add, like aloe, flax, those types of things, I want to be essentially just 100% that plant. And so that's another thing that's important for me when designing these recipes, is keeping all the ingredients sort of real and keeping them plant-based and things that actually occur in our environment naturally. And you'll see on a lot of shampoo bottles, that sort of thing, there's sodium lauryl sulfate or whatever other synthetic compounds. And I mean, those are definitely useful to us. But as far as the salty philosophy goes, I really want to keep the product as real as possible. Keep it real, keep it salty. With Salty Hair, I mean, I'd love for it to be a type of product that every bottle that's purchased will give back to the ocean. I mean, that's where the product comes from. I love being in the ocean, and I think it would be, I want the product to have something where every bottle purchased will give something back to the ocean. There's other great companies out there. One example is Ten Tree, who with every shirt purchased, they plant 10 trees. And I'd like to do something similar with that, where I'll donate $1 from every bottle essentially to an ocean charity. But I'm hoping it'll be something either that is helping cut down on plastics in the ocean, or on helping to rehabilitate coral reefs. Right. So yeah, every bottle is essentially it starts with real East Coast North Atlantic water right from just off the coast here, and it's brewed right here in Halifax as well. And I basically get the ingredients, put them together, and it's a Nova Scotia-based product. It's proudly brewed right here in Nova Scotia. I'm a big fan of Canadian-made products and trying to keep business and products made here in Canada as much as possible. So that's something that's important for me. Yeah, especially, I mean, right here in the Maritimes too. Keeping things as local as possible. batch that I make is essentially in a batch of about what could bottle 50 to 100 bottles. So it's small batch brewing. It allows for a lot of experimentation. It's almost as if in the craft brewing industry for beer, it's a similar setup, I guess, that I have, where I can, if I don't like a recipe or I get feedback from a certain hairstylist that needs more moisture, more salt, or more thickening agent or whatever, I can look at what ingredients to switch up. Maybe I need to add more aloe, maybe I need to add more flaxseed, and by keeping it to smaller batches, the product exactly can be changed fairly quickly and tailored to what the customer is asking for. Yeah. And I guess along the same lines, that's why I want to have a lineup of salt sprays. So I see a lot of other companies such as Bumble and Bumble or John Frieda. They have great products as well. But they really only have one salt spray in their lineup. I'd like to have an array of salt sprays to really allow the customer to choose what one is best for their needs, and whether they want something that's just on the lighter side, then they'd get salty light, and if they want something that's really thick, then they'd go with something that's meant for that. So I guess, that in terms of the future of Salty, right now we just have the one product, Salty Hair Original, essentially. So I want to, again, as I talked about, I've been working with hairstylists and trying to get their feedback to see what else is needed in each recipe, whether they want something that's thicker or want something that's a little bit lighter. And so part of the future of Salty would be to diversify the salt spray lineup itself, but then going forward, something that I hadn't really thought about before, but I started to see people talking about sugar sprays, and so I saw those as kind of an alternative to salt sprays if you wanted something less drying. And a lot of the recipes just called for water and sugar. Again, I'd want to do it with something that is already in nature. And I mean, right here in Canada, right here in Nova Scotia, we have several sap farms for maple syrup. And really, before you get to the maple syrup point, you have tree sap. And I haven't tested it out yet, but I have a feeling that that's going to feel pretty cool in the hair. So I want to source some tree sap from some of these maple syrup farms and start to play around with that and see what it offers, or what kind of feeling it creates for the hair. So one thing that's kind of fun about the company is being able to constantly change recipes and kind of innovate and recreate old recipes. And I think that's something, again, that the craft brewers around Halifax, a lot of the small brewers around Halifax have fun with as well. If it's Thanksgiving season or whatever, they have their pumpkin spice brews. And not to say that I'll be making pumpkin spice salty anytime soon, but the ability to really iterate on the fly and change recipes and make something that matches the needs of what hairstylists are essentially asking for. So I mean, Salty Hair sales at the moment are, I've had just sold to friends basically. I want to get it into hair salons in the next couple months. I've already given the product out to quite a few hairstylists who work in salons to get their feedback, but also to see kind of whether they'd be interested in carrying them. And actually there's a great local kind of made in Halifax mentality in the city. And so a lot of the hairstylists and small business owners are really open to having the product in their stores, which I think is awesome. And it really promotes, again, these kind of locally made products like Salty Hair. And so my goals for the next couple months would be to get products for sale in small hair salons, in a couple local surf shops if they're open to it. Hopefully they're open to it. And some of the tourist places around the city, such as the market, the Seaport Market, and that sort of thing. And online sales, I mean, I'll in the next little while, I'll have the product for sale on our website as well. So yeah, exactly. The recipe was originally designed for guys' hair with probably about my length of hair. It was designed to give that surfer look if you couldn't get in the ocean as much as you wanted. But I ended up giving bottles out to a few female friends, and the feedback from them was great. They loved how the effect it had on their hair and sort of the waviness feeling that it gave. So at that point, I decided to say, okay, well, this product can be really for both males and females, and kind of all hair types as well. Longer hair, shorter hair, sort of medium length hair. And yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to kind of use salty hair as well to get whatever effect you're looking for, but essentially it adds thickness to the hair, some grittiness, and gives it that sort of beach look. Keep it real, keep it salty.
One more time.
Keep it real, keep it salty. So yeah, when I got back to Halifax, I started testing out with salty recipes in my house. I've since moved all the production to outdoors, which I think is important because it boils off quite a bit of steam. But when I first started, I was in an apartment and basically was boiling this stuff on my stove. My roommates would come home and be wondering why the whole place was steamy. There was basically just like excess steam around the apartment. I think anyone who's lived with a home brewer would probably know sort of that same situation. So yeah, at that point, after I started making, more than 1 to 2 bottles at a time, that's when I realized, okay, I had to move the operation outside. After I collect the seawater and boil it down to the level of concentrate that I want, at that same time, just after the pot comes off the fire, but the water's still pretty hot, that's when I add in the flax and the seaweed, and they're basically, the flax is just flax seeds and the seaweed is just little crushed up bits of seaweed. I source from Acadian Sea Plants, actually, right here in Nova Scotia. And yeah, so it's almost like creating a tea or some other form, maybe a beer or whatever, but it's a brewing process. So after I boil it down and create that concentrate, I add in those right at the same time and essentially create a tea-like mixture before adding the rest of the cold ingredients, I call them, the ones that I add during the cold part of the process. And then I bottle it, and then bottle up that salty feeling.